Welcome everybody to the Management Committee meeting for today, February 12th, and we will get started. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes? Seeing none, without any objections, the agenda is approved. And then we also have our draft minutes from January 22nd. Everybody's had a chance to review those. Are there any changes, edits, additions, anything? All right, seeing none.
Move approval.
Thank you, Councilmember Lilligan moves. Is there a second? Moved by Osman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. Let me see, where are we? Here we are. Follow this one, it makes more sense. Okay, we don't have any business items today, so we're gonna move right into information. So we've got a bunch of items today, and we wanna make sure everybody has enough time, so we'll be kind of keeping an eye on that. So our first information item is data practices office update, and we've got Catherine Olson, the head of data practices, with us, and we've got a presentation, so come on up and welcome. Thanks for being here today. And we'll make sure we've got the clicker ready to go, good, and anything you need, you should be all set and welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair, committee members, I'm Catherine Olson, head of the Data Practices Office here at the Metropolitan Council, and I have with me today Nisha West, Data Practices Specialist at the Metropolitan Council.
Welcome, thanks for coming.
We're here today to update you on the work of our office in 2024. Nisha's going to take you through our data request trends and counts from last year, as well as some commonly requested data here at the council that might be interesting for you. Time permitting, I will go over a couple of other 2024 accomplishments and the 2025 goals we're looking at for this year. Nisha.
Awesome, thanks Catherine. Feels like work. Am I clicking the wrong thing? There we go. Okay, content. So, Madam Chairman, council members, thank you. Again, my name is Nisha West. I am a data practices specialist here. And I wanted to just give you a quick overview of some of our work and highlight some of the data practices trends we've been able to identify. So last year we saw a significant uptick in the amount of requests that came in. We received 777 total requests last year, in contrast to the 511 we received in 2023. So that's a 52% increase last year for us. Given the fact that for most of the year it was just the two of us, that was quite a large lift, but we were able to complete 651 of those requests, giving us an 84% completion rate for the year. This graphic shows the influx of requests per month by division, just to demonstrate that we do get a pretty steady influx of requests all year round. The last 2 years, we have been able to identify January as the busiest month for receiving requests, and December is typically the slowest month. If we take a closer look at the amount of requests we receive by division, regional administration by far receives the most requests at 49% of all data requests that come in. Transit follows with the next largest number. And here we've separated the true transit-related requests from the MTPD-related requests, just to show how those numbers correlate. But when you combine those two subparts, transit makes up 40% of the requests that we receive. So between transit and RA, that's 89% of all data practices requests for the council. Clearly our two biggest customers. And if we take an even closer look at the requests that come into regional administration, you can see that because it contains so many different departments with unique data, those requests are really segregated between those individual departments, and HR is the clear front runner with over half of the requests for RA. Procurement follows with a little over a quarter, and then you see the other departments listed have significantly smaller amounts. So again, we see that between two groups, RA and procurement, they receive the lion's share of requests that we work on for RA.
One quick question too. Do you track how many individual entities are making requests? I mean, one entity might make multiple requests, not a surprise, I'm sure. But do you track how many different individuals or entities are making these requests?
Madam Chair, great question. We do actually have that capability because we do have some frequent requesters. Unfortunately, I don't have that data with me today, but I would say we probably have around a dozen requesters that seem to always ask for information.
That's what I mean.
Capability.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And then just generally, if we take a look at all of the requests that we receive and kind of break them down by the division they fall into, these are the most commonly requested data types. In HR, that is mostly personnel data, applicant information, scoring interviews, and then procurement, it's mostly the RFPs or contracts that we've worked on. Finance would receive a lot of those employee wages, requests. Communication searches is listed here as well as previously. It's obviously not a department, but we do get requests that ask for all emails between employee A or employee B, or all correspondence about a specific topic that requires a server search and some kind of more of a manual process to find those. And then again, for transit, you will see that video is listed first. Video is also listed under the PD and MTS because all three of those groups hold video. And I would definitely say video is what is the most requested data type across all divisions. That's kind of just a quick synopsis of our work. Did you have any questions for me before I pass it back to Catherine?
Yeah, thanks, Ms. West and Ms. Olsen. And just, I'm wondering if you can maybe speculate why there was such a dramatic increase year over year in requests, a 53% increase.
It's hard to say. You know, our office has only been up and running for a few years.
Okay.
And so I think our 2023 numbers reflected that transition period between where requests were kind of fielded all over the council to when we started funneling them through our office directly.
So in effect, we're still sort of establishing baseline.
I think so.
Okay, cool, thanks, thank
Great
you.
question. Anything else? Okay.
Madam Chair, Council Committee members, if I could just follow up on that. Also, in 2023, in addition to our office being fully kind of staffed and recognized across the council, we did introduce our new data request management system, and I think as people got used to that, that meant that 2024 just people were comfortable using that online request system, and I think that that also kind of explains it, and maybe an election year as well.
Thank you, thanks.
Okay. As Nisha said, a lot of our work is focused on the task of responding to data requests and working with our partners across the council to understand their data. However, I do just want to quickly highlight a couple of other accomplishments in our office last year. So first, to support our staff knowledge and compliance with the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act across the council, we introduced a quarterly newsletter that goes out to all of our data practices liaisons and managers around the council. That helps us communicate information about things that we're noticing and want to remind people about. It has been well received, so we are continuing that this year. Second, to address the heavy workload that Nisha mentioned and that you highlighted, and also a high demand from data requesters in general, we hired another data practices specialist, Tarina Gordon. Unfortunately, Tarina's not able to be with us today, but hopefully she'll get to meet you soon. Tarina focuses specifically on Metro Transit data requests. As Nisha mentioned, transit accounts for a large portion of all requests that the council receives and has a lot of unique data and operational structures to navigate. So it makes sense for one staff person to specialize in learning and supporting those. Nisha's continuing to work with our other 4 divisions. She also works with creating and finessing our data request management system and with managing unique electronic data request searches, the communications searches that she mentioned. She's been an invaluable member of our team, so I'm glad she's here to talk to you today. And also looking ahead to 2025, we are supporting staff by introducing a new comprehensive data request training. The data training will help us again emphasize compliance and knowledge with the Data Practices Act, and it is complete. and should be available yet in this first quarter of 2025. We also continue to address some stress points for requesters, our division partners, and us within the data practices office. Those include the video requests that are one of our number one request types. They have become a common stress point at various points in the request process. So we are delving into the issues of what is causing those stresses and working to find solutions alongside our operations and IS partners. Second, large requests, which are very time consuming for us and for program staff, and which result in long waits for requesters, which can be frustrating. We are working to address how to be more consistent in applying our copy cost policy to balance the work required with these large requests and help manage requester expectations. So maybe they understand the work involved and target their requests a little bit. And finally, we're working on addressing confusion over how to submit and manage PD, police department related data requests. We're working to update our external messaging and our website so people better understand where to go to file different types of requests so they don't get shuffled around the council. And I think that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Great, are there any questions? Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This question is related to the chair's question earlier. Who are mostly making these requests? Are these individuals or journalists or other entities like government?
Can I do that? Thank you, Councilmember. Actually, we get requests from everyone. Individual citizens, a lot of media, especially when we have high profile events going on at the council. We get them from businesses who want to do business with us, who have previously done business with us, from concerned citizens. I mean, it really runs the gamut.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question, Tim. I'm just curious, what state laws govern data practices? Are you under a time limit? Usually there's something that tells us when we have to do things by in government, and I'm just curious if that is the case, and if so, how does that impact your work?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, there is one primary law that governs us, the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, which is Chapter 13 of the Minnesota statutes. That is our primary Bible in the data practices world, although there are other laws that govern us as well. It has a time limit of 10 business days if the requester is the subject of the data, and we do get a lot of those types of data requests, so there is some pressure to respond to those. For public data requests, the time frame is reasonable, and that is obviously open to interpretation, but we try our best to move as fast as possible. That's dependent on our workload as well as the size of the request and the complexity of the request.
Yeah, I can only imagine the pressure, coming in and is there such a thing as a complete request, that it has to be complete when it comes in too, when the clock starts ticking, or the minute somebody makes an ask, if it's not clear or they're, not focused, kind of targeted like you're looking for? I'm just curious. Sometimes there's a strategy to just blanket an organization, government organization especially, with just a lot. And I don't know, do we get much of that where it's not focused and specific and we have to kind of sift it out?
Well, Madam Chair, what I would say is that our policies and our access procedure says that it's a data request if you submit it through our portal.
Okay.
So once they submit it into our portal, we consider that a data request that has started. If they have made a very broad or a request that's hard to understand, and we ask for clarification, our access procedures also say that we ask them to respond within 30 days, and if they don't respond, we will consider the request closed.
Okay, great. Anything else? Well, we clearly appreciate the work that you do. Really glad that we've got the team in place and now adding another person, which is great. And it's almost mind-boggling to think that we haven't had this all along for as large of an organization as we are. We are, out there, the community is watching and media is watching and partners are watching. So thank you for your hard work. We look forward to seeing you again, and we support you. So I hope you know that, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you. All right, now we'll move on to our next information item, which is the sole source procedure overview. And we've got Jody Jacoby here today to talk about that. This is kind of always an interesting one. So thanks for being with us, Jody.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jody Jacoby, and I'm the Chief Procurement Officer. And this information item was prepared really to give you a high-level awareness of the behind-the-scenes process that supports each and every unique sole source request, ensuring transparency and confidence in how these decisions are made. Additionally, it serves to outline the council's commitment to being compliant and accountable with the core pillars of public procurement. Just to put it in context, in last year, 2027, there were 199 approved sole sources, and that is of the total of 26,200 individual procurement events. That's less than 1% of our total, and actually it equals out to 0.75% of total transactions. And so while this procurement tool is used sparingly, it's also essential to be effective stewards of taxpayer dollars. In 2024 and in 2023, our team, the procurement team, has facilitated many different trainings, and each quarter there is a training specifically dedicated to sole source procurements. And I think a few council members have sat in on that as well. So it's really important to have that grounding and understanding. Sole source procurements allow the council to proceed with unique and time-sensitive projects that cannot be addressed through the traditional competitive bidding process. So we'll start with what is a sole source. A sole source is a method where a contract is awarded without the traditional competitive procurement process. And this is in accordance with Minnesota state statute. And this statute is important. 16C governs all public entities with how they facilitate their procurement process. And so the process is similar, and the methods and qualifiers are also similar as outlined in state law. And that's regardless if it's the Met Council, if it's a state agency, if it's a county or a city. The only uniqueness at the Met Council is our micro purchase level, where we don't need any competition, is $10,000, except if you're using local funds and you're contracting with a MCUB provider, which, as you know, is the Metropolitan Council's underutilized business. That purchase value is up to $25,000. So as you'll hear more in the presentation, it's really used in specific circumstances that justify not bringing the project out to the open market. And some of these reasons, as you can read on the slide, include like patent or data rights, unacceptable delays, and it really depends on the project. The situation and the circumstances are always unique. However, we do have a very detailed and robust internal process to look at each and every sole source request to determine if it's reasonable to look at the what and the why instead of just jumping to the how. So what isn't a sole source? It's important to understand what would not qualify as a sole source for sophisticated justification. These are just a few examples that would not qualify: a personal or department preference for either a product or a vendor, the perception that the vendor is best qualified. We all agree and know as stewards of dollars that is best vetted through a competitive process. A lack of planning, where there is limited time to respond, or a past or existing relationship with a vendor. Now, there's a difference that vendors that we've worked with, and we have many contractors and consultants that we have relationships with. For example, if you are performing work at the Metro plant, you may have knowledge about the underground tunnels, how you check into a system, some of the standard operating procedures. That may be a competitive advantage, but it's not an unfair competitive advantage. That also doesn't qualify as a sole source because they understand how we do business. Again, sole sources are only appropriate when they're valid and there are specific reasons that clearly demonstrate a lack of viable options. Our goal is always to bring it to the market for full competition when appropriate. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the review process, just to get an understanding and again, and a grounding. Each and every sole source must be approved internally and by the delegated authority. We love documentation and forms and procurement. I can probably see a lot of nodding, but really it is a unique and individual request that needs to be approved up through the signature authority. And just like business items for contracts, if there is a sole source request in excess of $500,000, you will see a business item to approve that because it's within your signature authority. It starts with the project manager identifying that unique need based on their research. And again, there are many unique factors why. And additionally, identifying why a similar good or service cannot achieve the outcome. There are a few specific examples to point to where we have some proprietary systems where we cannot bring that out to the market. For example, NOR brakes or our powertrain control systems. We need these systems to integrate with existing equipment, and it could additionally, if we didn't use them, void any warranties we have. A little bit on the justification. The requester needs to provide additional information, and these are just a few statements demonstrating the necessity with bypassing the competitive procurement requirements. And the first is just identifying why it's a unique good or service and the only known commodity in the marketplace or service to perform the work. An exclusive source, so the source is the only known provider capable of delivering it. And we, in the presentation, will show some documentation where it's not just the ownership of the project manager. We also request the vendor submit that documentation to supplement the request. A single available provider, again, that they're the only one available to provide it due to uniqueness, compatibility requirements. I mentioned the NOR brake. We wouldn't want to interchange different braking vendors. That's an example. And then the last one is critical continuity of compliance. And an example for that would be where possibly we're working with a consultant and we need them to finish the work, and that work is based on existing reports or data, and they are the best firm in that market, in that industry to be able to finish the project. Again, the intent of the justification is clear, defensible reasons for not going out to the open market. This is an example, very small, but it is in your packet, of some of the documentation that's submitted to procurement in tandem from our vendors, our contractors, and consultants to confirm what the project manager has requested. Procurement review, I was on vacation last week and my staff presented this, so I'm just going to switch a few slides and jump to slide 7 first and talk about the initial stage. And we have a sole source review team in procurement of various levels of staff with different expertise who look at each and every project to do their research, to have conversations, to pull in other staff, to possibly do some market analysis or call our peers. Sometimes we'll invite in our partners from IS or other areas to provide this detail to make a recommendation. And then if they indeed do approve it, they'll add that justification to the form before it's routed to the signature authority for approval. And I'll say in the last year or so, this sole source review team has declined 60 sole sources. And so that doesn't mean that we didn't help our customer get to the end result to get them what they need, but likely we took it out to the open market. Possibly we found a cooperative contract with a peer. There are many different vehicles to get to that outcome. It doesn't always take the form of a sole source. But once this team reviews and approves, it's routed to the Chief Procurement Officer to make that final review and approval. And I have sent a few back to my team to ask for more conversations. Sometimes if I still have questions, it's an opportunity for me to connect with the business unit leaders to learn more. And sometimes there's additional information provided where it's supplemented. And then sometimes we've decided to go back out to the market. There are many, many conversations and qualifiers in that. And then each and every request is still routed uniquely and individually through the council's signature authority. So that's a little bit about that process. And again, signature authority, I mentioned that where each of these requests are approved up through, there are multiple steps to approve, and there's no sole authority. It follows our delegation of signature request. So that's just a little bit of information on the volume, on what is a sole source, what isn't a sole source, and what the standard process is as a means of intake. And I'm happy, I know there's a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair, thank you for this. It would be really good if we could send this presentation out to members of the Transportation Committee. As you know, we get a lot of questions about it, and some of the big things that we purchased are things like technology and things like that that have to be compatible with prior systems, and completely upending some things will lead to exorbitant costs, and so it'd be good to send it out, so.
Yeah, that's a really great suggestion. I would say actually give it to all council members. We're kind of playing changing of seats on certain committees too, but I think that I know that council members have had requests before that might not understand all of this. So this is a really good foundation to help them to understand, it's not plain favoritism. It's a very small piece of what we do, but it's very necessary in certain cases. And I just want them to feel good about that. That's okay. So we'll get that out to council members, especially transportation. That'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? All right, well, thank you, Jody, for coming before us today and for this review. There was just a few things in here too that I'm like, oh yeah, that's how that works. So very helpful, and we appreciate all of your hard work. And so now you will stay up here with us. We'll move on to item number 3 under information. It's our quarterly procurement and MCUB goals review. And along with Jody, we're going to bring up Ashante Payne, Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity Assistant Director. So good to see you again, Ashante.
All right, good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Again, my name is Jody Jacoby, and I'm the Chief Procurement Officer, and I'm joined today with my partner, Shanti Payne, Assistant Director in the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. And we're here to present 2 quarters ending 2024, the procurement summary and the Metropolitan Council underutilized business reports. Presenting this year-end data is important to all of us as it's a comprehensive overview of what the procurement outcomes were, allowing us to look at trends, measure process, and then identify areas of improvement as we continue to support our goals of not only contract outcomes, but efficiency, equity, and transparency. And as you'll notice, the format is different. Thanks to communications and others, it was redesigned to outline an opportunity to talk about some stories and the impact of the contracts that are behind the numbers. And this change really allows us to showcase how our work together contributes to the broader goals. And it's not just an OEO and procurement report or an effort, but really a council-wide collaboration with many, many partners, many in this room, but including OGC, project managers, real estate risk, and many others. And again, we believe in highlighting the work we can really better illustrate collective efforts to achieve our goals. And so we hope this format helps it be more meaningful to you, and after we look forward to some feedback. The expenditures policy 14-2 allows the regional administrator to approve procurement awards up to $500,000 for goods and services and up to $10 million for construction, as long as it's within their capital budget and 10% of the engineer's estimate. And of course, as there's sufficient funds to complete it. You see these business items and you review and approve individual contract awards in various committees, where each contract again is carefully examined, and then you're authorizing delegation to the regional administrator to award and execute. And the information before you is grouped similarly as you've seen it before in the appendix by the value and type. But this report really focuses on contracts greater than $175,000. And that's significant because $175,000 is the value that we formally advertise. And we accomplish this by posting it in many areas, but including the doing business page on the council's website. And so to ground you in the data, the full procurement and MCUB report is broken down in quarter and included in the appendix. And in Q3, there were 8,301 individual procurement events, including purchasing card transactions, POs, requests for quotes, requests for proposals, and construction bids. And in Q4, the number was almost 1,000 higher. It was 9,289, which is pretty typical at the end of the year as our staff are busy finishing up projects and getting their work accomplished. So I'm going to begin by reviewing some of the procurement summary, and then I'll hand it over to Ashanti for a deeper dive. A little bit of overview and analysis and looking at 2024. This is similar to other months or other quarters where 95% of the procurement total had a procurement value of less than $10,000. And 80% of the total spend was greater than $500,000. So what does this data tell us? We focus our efforts on the procurement methods for the largest and the smallest purchases to streamline activities. And in the last few years, since we've implemented MCUB Direct, where you do not need to have more than one quote for an MCUB vendor, when using local dollars and up to $25,000, we've seen some really fantastic behavior changes. When we started in 2019, that percent was 3%. And the last 2 quarters in 2024, it averaged 33%. This was the highest that we've seen, and it really shows the power of the training, the power of the partnership, the power of looking at the data to make better and different decisions. And for our team, we're always looking at those totals by purchasing agent. Is it the commodity? Is it the purchasing agent being more intentional? And our tagline is think MCUB first. And again, we're really proud to show and illustrate some of those behavior changes that have increased that percentage. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see where you can find this detailed data in the appendix. All right, the next I want to talk about some of the holistic changes that we've made with sourcing. And really our team, our fabulous team in procurement and partners, we're looking at a more holistic perspective of a procurement action plan for each and every project. We have more tools to make decisions and to get to that outcome with cooperatives, with some partnership with local entities, with different ways to compete the projects. But we've transitioned from a transactional heavy metric transactions are important to more of a transformational. What are all the key criteria that would be essential for success? Not just on our mega projects, but on all of our projects, and bringing in different stakeholders to help us build a really robust scope of work, to look at how the project is going to be managed, and some of those different very important perspectives. But for our team, it has definitely been a more holistic approach versus a hammer and nail. And we're looking at efficiency, cost effectiveness, looking at the spend. How is the market changing? We've got a lot of volatility in the market right now, and we are looking to be more agile with our tools and our staff to get better contracting outcomes. We have used more cooperative procurements. In the last few quarters, with your help, we approved 2 more joint powers to leverage some of the advantages, again, as another tool to look at instead of bringing it to the open market. There was a recent national study that said on average, and it really depends on the cost, but you're saving 10 to 20% by using a cooperative procurement. And on average, they said for a larger procurement, it's about $30,000 that you save. And the vendors love it as well, and we have leverage not only with buying power, but leverage because the vendors, the suppliers are not doing individual submissions and individual proposals on our projects. So we're very proud of that, and that's really been a transformation with our team. Again, looking at different solutions to come to the table as a partner. Some of the highlights on the invitation for bid, and again, this data is included on some of those slides, are execution of multiple snow removal contracts for various council locations, execution of the Hopkins Rail Support Facility, which is the final construction project for the Green Line extension. That's a really exciting milestone. Some highlights for request for proposal was the Micro Transit Services Project. It was run as a pilot in an area in North Minneapolis, and based on the success of this pilot, the services were expanded to Roseville, Oakdale, and Woodbury, with future communities to be added in upcoming years. There was an increase in master contracts council-wide, looking at more flexibility for council to retain multiple contractors for general services, again, for flexibility to be able to pivot based on anticipated future needs. And then finally, some of the other highlights are looking at some other tools to do the work, including expansion and focus on procurement strategy, looking at increased as appropriate for cooperative spend, which was nearly 46% in that category. And using a cooperative, there has been a process where the project was brought to the market. We're just leveraging the procurement power of many different agencies to get to contract quicker. So those are a few contract highlights, and I will transition to Ashanti.
Thanks, Jody. Ashanti Payne, Assistant Director, Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. And I'm here to talk about our MCUB participation summary for Q3, Q4, and year-end 2024. So I wanted to lay a little bit of groundwork in terms of how we measure our success in terms of MCUB participation. And that is 2 primary ways. One with commitments. Commitments relative to construction and contracted services. What that means is any procurement that is competitively bid or advertised, or that could have been competitively bid or advertised, is included. And that's important in terms of defining the data set and what we're looking at relative, because those are the procurements that we are actually or potentially coming to the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity to review for subcontracting opportunities for a goal. It also, commitments tell us how we are doing right now. So if we are going to embark on an initiative or a project that we think will help us increase or improve our outcomes relative to small businesses, this is what's going to tell us if that is having an impact or if we might need to pivot. It is also how compliance is assessed. So when we're talking about our regulatory requirements with FTA or USDOT, this is how they measure us through our commitments. If we do not hit our commitments for that federal fiscal year or reporting period, we have to write a shortfall analysis. The other key measurement is payments. And payments definitely can be a useful tool, especially if you have some common denominators that help you compare apples to apples. So some good payment outcomes or measurements that we have is our Federal Environment Protection Agency, or EPA, and that's submitted through the Public Facilities Authority for Environmental Services projects, because you are measuring payments against a grant. One grant, sometimes it may be 2 grants, but you're comparing apples to apples in the payments that are made against that one specific grant. P-card is another payment method that is good payment data. It's the closest thing we have to real time. It is, there's a specific cutoff period when everybody has to have their P-card payments verified, so it's a defined period that we can measure and assess our achievements against. And then individual projects, it really, if you are, especially those large projects that we have, so we can really determine if what was committed to at the beginning of that project is actually what was paid to the small businesses that were identified for that project. So it's a good compliance tool that's used to measure success on individual projects. Purchase orders, that is an area in terms of our MCUB where we have the most work to do. There's not a lot of stories that we can tell against purchase orders because we don't have a way currently, we're working towards it, but currently to normalize the data to be able to identify trends, impacts, etc. You can contrast that with our USDOT federal FTA semi-annual report, where we do have common factors and normalizing factors that we can use to actually make some assessments relative to payments. What I mean by that is payments, we separate payments, direct payments to prime contractors versus payments to subs. Why that's important is because one, pay cycle, the obvious one, you have pay cycles, you know when we're directly paying a vendor, but when that vendor is paying subs, or when those subs are appearing on a project, could vary across a project, especially if it's a multi-year project, etc. There are also payments that we measure for active projects versus payments for projects that were closed during the reporting period, because there are some outcomes and things that you can expect relative to if projects are active or still active, or projects that have actually closed out during reporting period, again, normalizing the data. I also wanted to talk about some of the include and exclude rules that we apply to our MCUB participation measurement. Some are very obvious, like rent, utilities, payroll and benefits, but some may not be as obvious. But again, it's important in terms of how we define the data set and what types of procurements and payments we are including in ours. And these are all of the exclusion categories. So the first Okay, commitment data. So the Metropolitan Council met the 14% goal in Q3 of 2024, but we did not meet it in Q4. The highest amount of awarded contract dollars, or Q4 was the highest amount of awarded contract dollars, but low MCA participation. Q2 was the lowest MCA participation and achievement since we started tracking this data in 2020. And Q1 was the highest achievement thus far for 2024. And that was largely due to the project with IS, where we did not have a goal, but rather we worked with IS on a process that included outreach and other factors to be intentional about efforts to directly contract with IT vendors that are MCA vendors. And then if you look at that compared to, let's say, payments, even though that occurred, those awards that happened in Q1, we still have not seen the full impact of those payments to those firms. And we don't know or can't tell when those payments will start showing up, and they'll probably start trickling in over a period of time, because that's a 5-year contract. We're trending lower in income participation compared with the previous 2 years. But I think the good thing that we can definitely say is that we did meet our commitment goal of 14%. And that was both in the last 3 years we have met it. The only year we did not meet it was in 2022. So we also like to look at the distribution across gender and racial categories. There wasn't a real equitable distribution in Q3, but definitely that turned around in Q4, and there was a more equitable distribution of MCUP dollars across all gender and racial categories. Black Americans had MCUP participation for both men and women-owned firms, and there were significant contracting dollars awarded to Asian Pacific Americans and Caucasian women. And these reference slides can be found on appendix slides 47 and 48. In terms of individual divisions, 2 divisions met the 14% MCUP participation goal for 2024. Regional administration normally has been consistently in previous years meeting the MCUP goal. They met it in Q1. Again, that was that IS project, but have failed to reach the 14% mark since Q1. And then community development and transportation services, they did have spend in Q3 and in Q4, but it was not MCUP eligible. It was subscriptions, or they may have rented space in the community to hold a community event, which again, we do not count that towards our MCUP participation. MCUP participation has been trending up since 2020. And the highest participation in awarded contracts occurred in 2022. The Metropolitan Council, we have met our 14% MCUP goal the previous 2 years, and also we exceeded the goal in 2024. There was a significant increase in contracting dollars versus the other years. And if you look on detailed on page 51, if you look at those bars, as you see for 2024, the contracting dollars are way up. But that didn't really translate to a significant increase in MCUP dollars. And you can find this slide on reference slide 51. And the reason why we track that green dot, which is the actual projects that come through OEO that we review for contracting dollars, because it tells us what we're seeing in terms of review for goals. And if you look, yes, 2024, we had the highest amount of contracting dollars, but the lowest amount, with the exception of 2020, of what we actually seen and reviewed for MCUP goals.
And Ashante, what slide are you on that's referencing all of this?
This would be
51.
appendix slide 51.
Okay, and so this was Q3 of 2024, this slide here. That's 51.
This slide that I am on is both, it shows 2020 through 2024.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it's okay. I'm
And
just
it's ref-
tracking on the backside, all of the tables you have.
Yes, that would be on the appendix slide 51.
Okay, thanks.
So if you compare it to 2020, where we had 12.2%, you see that low bar of contracting dollars, that blue bar. Compared to 2024, we had over 120 million more in contracting dollars, but that only resulted in an additional $2 million in projects that were actually reviewed by the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. So, and it's not a coincidence that in 2022, where we had our highest participation, 16.5%, that we had the highest amount of projects that were actually reviewed for subcontracting dollars in the MCUP goal. A lot of that can be referenced in terms of there were a lot more sole source and cooperative agreements that were utilized in 2024 than in 2023. And you say, well, we just heard from Jody that sole source only 1%. That is true, and there's definitely sole source is a definite tool and useful tool for both business units and the council. However, it does have an impact on the outcomes that we see. So the overall thing I would say is that we definitely need to be thoughtful about when we use those, and when you combine them with cooperative agreements, all of them may only be 1% of the total procurements, but those 199 are all applicable to this data set, and we're talking about a combined data set. That's why it has an impact on the numbers that we are seeing. And especially we're talking about cooperative agreements that are not our Minnesota state cooperative agreement, because our Minnesota state cooperative agreement actually does offer opportunities for MCUP participation, whereas when we use cooperative agreements from other states, there's zero opportunity for MCUPs to participate in those contracts. So it impacts. So we should be thoughtful, definitely understand the trade-offs that are involved with those decisions. So payment data.
And I just wanna so you are on slide 16, which this is great. You've got 22 slides total. I just wanna make sure that we have enough time for the other two presenters here today too.
Yep, I'll rush through the rest of this.
You're doing great, you're doing great. Just-
Okay.
Yeah.
P-card payments, Met Council achieved 3.9% MCUP participation for P-card in Q3. Transportation services was one division that met the 10% goal in Q3. Both community development and transportation services met the goal for Q4 and for the year, those two divisions. This information is detailed on reference slides 52 and 53. P-card trends, as I told you, this is a good data set, so we can make some assessments. We can definitely understand the trends that are involved relative to P-cards. And that's why we know that in 2024, compared to previous years, we trended lower than we have in the previous 2 years. And this information is detailed on appendix slide 54. Our highest MCUP participation with MCUP payments occurred in 2023. And we were trending up in that area up until 2024. MCUP payments, Q3 and Q4 2024. We had payment distribution to MCUPs across all racial and gender categories. Highest percentage of payments went to Caucasian women. Next highest was Black Americans. And we had 0 direct payments for MCUPs for construction in Q3. And direct PO payment data is actually the best source that we have currently for payment data. We can represent that in trends and understand those are when we make direct payments to MCUBs as vendor. And if that's on appendix slides 55 and 56, that's that middle column. And then in terms of trends, we made 198,000, just over 198,000 direct payments to MCUB firms on construction projects in 2024. All direct payments on construction projects went to Asian Pacific Americans. This is the one payment category where we can provide trend data. The highest achievement over the last 3 years occurred in 2022. This data definitely reflects the absence of planning. We don't know, we don't have a plan, so we don't know if we implement any initiatives, how that will impact this data set, how we're doing, but we can track it, we can understand it. It's also reflective of what we learned from the small business equity audit and the firms that we heard from that participated in the survey. And this data is detailed on appendix slide 57. The Metropolitan Council made payments to 138 unique MCUP firms in Q3 2024 and 151 in Q4. So that is moving in the right direction relative to our sustainability and what we like to see in terms of those who are participating in our procurements. Caucasian women-owned firms received the majority of the payments, followed by Black American-owned firms, and then payments made to MCUP firms in Q3 were distributed across all racial and gender categories, except for subcontinent Asian women-owned firms. But Q4, we had participation across the board. I think an important thing to note is that there was no decrease in participating firms in any of the racial categories. And some of the categories showed increases. So that's also a good trend for us. Some of the highlights that we definitely want to talk about is our direct spend. Jody talked a lot about this and the improvements, both in process and our attitude relative to micro purchases. And again, when I talk about our cooperative agreement, we definitely highlight the success on our Minnesota State cooperative agreement. We have some success, and we usually have success in that area in every quarter. And then I want to highlight the partnerships, our supplier diversity work. We started with New Flyer a few years ago. It was just procurement and OEEO pushing this. It's been a success. Then we expanded with Gilead. And now Metro Transit folks and others are identifying additional areas and additional ways to expand that. Weren't even included. I just find out about it and I cheer. So that's a good thing. It's one of those things that we talk about. This is not just an OEEO responsibility. It takes all of us, and it's definitely a positive sign when others are acting intentionally without me pushing them along. One of the other things I definitely want to talk about, given that this council granted funds for this project, we contracted with a third party to provide supportive services to MCUP firms, and it has been successful. And through our quality control process, we have identified additional courses and other things that we'll be offering in 2025. We continue to get good feedback, and participation and excitement about this program is up. And that information is referenced on appendix slides 62 and 63. With that, we will rest for any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. More of just a comment. So I'm glad you talked a little bit about the work with New Flyer and Gillett, because some of those types of contracts are these big contracts that it can skew all of our data. And so it's really nice to see that some of the efforts that we've done and that they're starting to look at other ways to implement that with other contracts. So just thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you for being here. A lot of information. Thank you for pulling it all together for us. And we look forward to more good work in 2025. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now bring up, we have 2 more items remaining, so let's keep an eye, maybe 10 minutes per, or a little, we can, maybe the quarterly investment area might be a little less. Okay, so we've got, our next item is the Business Continuity Program Update. And with us, we have Kathy Matter, our Director of Enterprise Risk Management. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for
The
having
floor
us.
is yours.
Thank you. Madam Chair, and council members, I'm Kathy Matter. I'm Director of Enterprise Risk Management and Business Continuity at the Met Council. And I have Lisa Belland with me, who is my partner in crime. I'm currently serving in a acting leader manager role for business continuity for us at the Met Council. And we're here today to just give you a quick update on 2024 for business continuity, and I'll actually start with a really quick recap of exactly what business continuity is for this organization. I'll talk quickly about 2025 priorities, what's on our radar for the year, and feel free to pop in with questions either as we go or at the end here. For those of you who aren't familiar with business continuity at the Met Council, we home the work homes to risk management. I report to Phil, the Chief Risk Officer and Deputy Regional Administrator at the Met Council. And the work that we do is enterprise-focused program addressing continuity of operations for all Met Council divisions, services, and support services, and technology, although it doesn't say technology, that is under inside our wheelhouse as well. So we focus on aligning the work that we do with requirements to do the work. We do have those requirements. The work itself is actually multifaceted, defining what do we do, why do we do it, how important or how critical is it, which allows us in an emergency situation to triage services, what continues and what doesn't in the moment. Also known to us business continuity nerds as business impact analysis data. And with that information, we help the organization define what an appropriate recovery strategy is in the event of interruption of those services, and then build plans, test those plans, and maintain those plans. Also within our wheelhouse is crisis communications and mass incident notification, software tools, and we manage those processes as well. Oh dear, what did I do? I like to tell, I'm a grammar nerd, and I like to tell people COOP is our acronym, and it's a verb and a noun. The verb is the work, doing the planning work that results in plans, actual plans for the organization. We have multiple, over 80 plans and counting, that we have built and maintain and test for the Met Council. Those plans are built based on that established and leadership approved priority of services for this organization. And then we also build the plans based really on an all hazard scenario, total loss of facility and contents. We don't build, generally speaking, scenario specific plans. There are 2 kind of notable exceptions in that space. One is our cyber incident response plan, which is a very scenario-specific type of plan that we have built and maintained. And then the other is labor relations, continuity of operations planning for the organization, which I'll mention in a little bit here. And this work is, like we like to say, evergreen, it's never done, very cyclical, and we keep on doing it. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits to doing the work. At the end of the day, it just makes us a more resilient and prepared organization. It was that preparedness that when the pandemic hit, we actually declared an emergency before the state of Minnesota did as an organization and hit the road running on responding to and managing that particular crisis for the Met Council. As I referenced earlier, the work is mandated under two specific governor's executive orders. One is the Minnesota Emergency Operations Plan, which really defines our responsibilities and obligations as a government entity to support a community-wide crisis anywhere in Minnesota, really. And then the other executive order is continuity of government, which is really our responsibility to do the planning to continue our services in the event we have a disaster as an organization. I like to tell people when we're doing this work in the organization that at any given point in time, we have to be able to do both of them. So if we're experiencing a catastrophe ourselves as an organization, it does not exempt us from our obligations under that Minnesota Emergency Operations Plan. I'll talk about that more in a minute because we had that exact situation this past summer. So we have our own internal policy and procedure around business continuity, and then we participate regularly in audits that basically make sure we as an organization have done and are doing this work. And Office of the State Legislator, Office of OSA, State Auditor, FTA has audited us. Just multiple organizations have audited us for the completion of this work. 2024, this past summer, we actually had a very unique situation where on June 18th, we received the first of 3 10-day notices of intent to strike. On June 22nd, Governor Walz declared an emergency for the state of Minnesota for non-seasonal flooding throughout the state of Minnesota. The Met Council was one of the organizations that was activated under the MEOP with about 7 or 8 other state agencies. And that activation happened while we as an organization are facing this labor relations crisis, and we have wastewater treatment plants that are situated on rivers that are flooding in Minnesota. So this is right at the bottom of downtown St. Paul, and while it didn't break any records, it was a significantly impacting event for this region. That we had to respond to and deal with as an organization. So at the end of it, for business continuity, the residual impacts and just kind of the to-do items that came out of it were significant. On the flooding side of the equation, we staffed that State Emergency Operations Center in person for 9 days. Basically about 10-hour days each day. And while we were doing that, another one of us was working on those labor relations, dusting off those labor relations plans with this organization, predominantly environmental services, but the entire organization. And so multiple plans were updated and just revised and refreshed as a result of kind of those kind of 2 multi-faceted crises that we were dealing with. In that labor relations work, we also had significant collaborators and partners doing that work every day for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. right? So, out of bad comes good for us as an organization, and that's in the business continuity space. We always leverage those situations to make ourselves more prepared, more resilient for the next version of a bad thing happening. Besides those crises in 2024, just kind of in our regular bucket of work, we had a major initiative this work, updating our National Incident Management System, ICS training, which if you're not aware of it, NIMS is a FEMA based process that really enables organizations to respond to and manage a crisis. We're mandated to use NIMS. FEMA attaches receipt of federal disaster dollars to use of NIMS in emergency response activities in an organization. And so we went through a major refreshing and updating of that training for our leaders who have emergency response roles and assignments in a crisis for the Met Council. One of the things that came out of that was, in some form, we're going to bring that information and training to the Metropolitan Council members for them to understand, number one, what we're doing in that space for our leadership, how it's structured, but also how it extrapolates and applies to council members and what their roles would be in different types of crises. We also continued the expansion and training and evolution of our crisis communications capabilities. We actually have 3 different tools that require care and feeding on a regular basis. We use them routinely to kick off exercises, tabletop exercises, and then we do scheduled exercises every year using those tools. We continue the work of developing our enterprise risk management framework, which is something new here at the Met Council. Defined and staffed the new director position, which is me. Business continuity is still reporting to me. And so figuring out the trickle down effect of that. So we completed baseline risk assessments for capital programs and environmental services this past year, and in progress, we're continuing our work to do risk assessments for the rest of the organization and to build out exactly what enterprise risk management big picture should look like for the Met Council. We're also involved in climate action planning for the Met Council. Me and a leadership role with the high level climate action work planning leadership team, and then also with the climate risk and vulnerability subgroup. And then that evergreen work that I referenced at the very beginning, we do this all day, every week, every month. Just exercising, evolving, and updating our continuity of operations plans and moving the needle of our continuity planning maturity and resilience in a good direction and a positive direction. That those crises this summer, those crises actually moved the needle and evolved those plans. I kind of chuckled when that initial call came from the governor's office. It came into Phil and Ryan, and they were just told SEOC, the State Emergency Operations Center, is opening up Monday morning, 7:00, be there. And they were like, but Phil knew who to call. He knew what to do. But as a result of that, we also updated some procedures and information in our command and our MEOP plan so that other people will know what to do.
And can I just add, committee members, that call came like at 10:00 on Saturday night, so there was a lot of scrambling going around.
Thank you for answering.
Yes.
So I want to thank you, Kathy, and others that helped.
It did. And for me personally, it came at the tail end of my senior nephew's graduation party that I was the chief cook and bottle washer and cleaner, and yeah, it was interesting times. And 3 strikes, yes, or potential strikes. And one other thing in this bucket of our evergreen work, we're actually sitting in a position here today where our software is expiring, both our plan development software, which is our plan repository, and our communications, crisis communications software. And so we are just up to here in the procurement process for replacement tools in that space, and that will be a big chunk of work this year. Which I'm talking about next, 2025 priorities. And the first thing mentioning, just completing the procurement and implementation of multiple critical software tools for business continuity and enterprise risk management. And on the enterprise risk management side, doing that in collaboration and lockstep with internal audit and Marie Henderson in finance internal controls, so that we build that enterprise risk management framework properly for the Met Council moving forward here in the next few years. We are going to develop and conduct multiple tabletop exercises, and really our goal there is to build muscle memory. People work on those plans and they need to know how to use the plans. And then really test our emergency response and management capabilities and identify gaps and vulnerabilities within our existing plans. A major initiative for us carrying forward from last year is collaborating with information services and just really doing some catch up on building our resilience and recoverability capabilities in our whole technology domain, which is just really critically important for us as an organization. We will also be completing development of and mitigating our workforce single point of failure and succession planning vulnerabilities. That's most likely work that will start but not finish this year, and that will be enterprise based. We'll be leading the work to mitigate vulnerabilities that have been identified within our current emergency response processes and plans as an organization. So that's just kind of something that landed on our hot potato on our side of the fence. And the pieces are there in this organization. We just need to build just some consistency in approaches and really an accountability structure and just kind of some authority for the whole organization, so that they know how it should be done. And so we'll be leading that work. And then finally, just working on business continuity and ERM, staff augmentation and replacement, just kind of based on the trickle down impacts of my change in responsibilities and Lisa's change in responsibilities. Zoom.
Wow.
It was a little faster than I planned, but.
No, it was great, and thank you for your hard work because it's so important. And any questions? Well, I have a question. So FEMA, is it or isn't it? At the federal level, they're talking about dismantling it. So, I don't know what that means for continuity of operations.
Right.
When we might not have a federal partner that steps in and meets us where we're at. So I'm sure you'll be keeping a close, we all are, right? What's happening every single day.
Yes.
And so I know that kind of a threat, quite frankly, impacts the work you're doing directly, so.
Right. And Madam Chair and committee members, that, even if that were to happen, we still have an obligation as an organization to know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. The FEMA does wonderful work. Our emergency responders do fabulous, often unappreciated, sometimes appreciated, but sometimes unappreciated work, and there's a incredible foundation that has been laid for us that it can't be erased. The structure of agencies can change, agency funding can change, but and we're smart, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out the impacts of the ground shifting under our feet, and we'll improvise, adapt, and overcome. Right, boss?
That's right.
And I do appreciate how much you're working with IS, and I know you're intersecting with Gretchen. So
Yes.
we do have the A team on this, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for your hard work, both of you. So important.
Thank you.
Any other
Appreciate it.
questions, comments? All right, appreciate it. We'll look forward to updates, and again, our gratitude to both of you and everyone across the council for making sure that we are doing our due diligence.
Thank you.
And keeping us safe and doing our job for the region. All right, I don't believe we have time to get, so Mark, such a bummer. I hope you enjoyed all of the reports that you got to hear today.
He knew this might be coming.
Yeah, so we'll bring you back, and we'll move you up closer to the top of the next agenda. Unless you got 2 minutes you wanna,
Yeah, maybe not.
Probably not.
Madam Chair, I'll be here next week for another item too, so I can
Okay.
double up.
that'd be great, combine them. And again, our apologies, Mark.
If anybody has any questions on the presentation, they can just reach out to
And
me
you'll
in the
just,
meantime.
you'll just put it on our next agenda then, plus your other item. Okay, that'd be great. All right, so, seeing no other, business to come before the committee, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.